Thank you.
Let you take off. Thanks, bro.
Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. Hello, Isaka, San Diego. It's really great to be here. So today, this is actually my first time ever attending. Let's see, I went to college at USD back in 2000, 2004, and then moved back home because I had no job or money. So went back to LA. I'm from the Pasadena area and came back down though to San Diego in 2011. So I've been here ever since, and it's now home. Love it here, and love the community here. So thanks for the invite. So that said, a little bit about my presentation. I forgot the clicker. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about a topic that probably you don't hear a lot about, and that's cybersecurity for operational technology, sometimes called OT. Sometimes you'll hear about ICS, industrial control systems. Um, a little background about me. That's something that I have been, clicker's not working. If you go to the next slide, though, sir. Yeah, yeah, next slide, Dave. Don't mind. Something that I've been working on my whole career. So I started actually, as I said, I went home back to Los Angeles, Pasadena area after college. I got hired on by Southern California Edison. If you don't know who they are, they're a large electric utility out of LA, um, with all this, so providing electricity to millions of their customers all around Los Angeles, and was lucky enough to find myself on their cybersecurity team. And at the time, they were upgrading their EMS system, that's energy management system. That's essentially the application that that controls and commands the bulk electric system. So in electric utilities, there's transmission and distribution. Transmission is like the higher voltage, and don't want to say it's the more critical piece, but yeah, that's the side that ensures that the bulk grid is stable across the whole country. And so we were upgrading that, and they asked someone in the cybersecurity team to ensure the security of it because it's probably one of the most important applications that they operate. And so, yeah, I started doing that in 2004, and I fell in love with it because I always thought cybersecurity was cool. I always thought hacking things and stealing data and was cool. But when you start hacking things and start making things turn off and there's a physical impact to what you're doing, that's just next level to me. That was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And so I fell in love with it. And I spent 7 years at Southern California Edison. And then, as I mentioned, I came back to San Diego and worked here at SDG&E. So I worked with, actually got a former colleague here in the audience as well. We worked together. And so, yeah, so our team really helped protect the electric grid from adversaries and other threats. So that said, after 13 years of working as a practitioner, um, I went into startups. Never thought I'd go into startups, but I was very passionate about OT cybersecurity. And if you don't know much about that market, kind of the first technologies that were purpose built for OT and ICS, those companies came out of stealth around 10 years ago. And at SDG&E, we had actually one of the, I think, most forward thinking, and we had one of the most talented OT cybersecurity teams ever assembled. I can honestly say this because I now get to sell into a lot of these companies. And we had a elite team back when I was there. They're still great, not knocking on them now. But and I found kind of this, or I was very passionate about this first generation of OT cybersecurity technologies. And what these were technologies to do deep packaging of ICS and OT protocols. So if you think about when you drive around, you see all the substations with the electrical equipment, and you might see little houses that are housing a bunch of equipment. Well, there's equipment there that commands and controls the electric grid, and they're sending communications back to control centers where operators are operating the grid, right? And so, what these technologies did was parse all the protocols that are proprietary and very legacy of all these kind of legacy devices to look for certain things, to look for adversaries trying to manipulate things. And actually, there was some research. If you Google this, if you're familiar with the concept of fuzzing protocols or sending malformed, I'll say, packets of certain protocols, there were some researchers started doing it to OT devices. And if you know the electric utility space, they all use a protocol called DMP3. That's the protocol they use to like open the breakers and control the grid. And these researchers found if you send this one malformed packet, you can literally brick all devices in your whole system. And I was the OT security architect, and we're moving from serial to IP-based routable networks, and I freaked out. I was like, holy cow, like if this happens, this is going to be a really, really bad day. DNP3, D is in dog, N is in Nancy, P is in Paul, and the number 3. So long story short, yeah, fell in love with those technologies, and we deployed them at SDG&E. And I found myself, yeah, after doing that, found myself wanting to really help other utilities and other people in other critical infrastructure sectors. Because if you think about it, electric utility sector, oil and gas sector, manufacturing sector, they have a lot of common, which is they have similar technologies and the processes of what they're doing, right? The physical process is critical to the reliability and availability and to them making money, right? And so yeah, this was emerging then, and I got into startups, and I actually went into sales. I never thought I'd be a sales guy. I was like, I had thousands of sales guy pitching me security products, and I became that guy. And a lot of lessons learned there. But that said, after being a sales guy for 7 years and doing 2 different startups, I actually co-founded my own company called Frenos. And maybe here in San Diego, there's some Spanish speakers, hopefully. Frenos means brake in Spanish, like a car brake to slow down. And we are focused on slowing down industrial cyber threats by doing fully simulated penetration testing in a digital twin using an AI agent. So not this is a sales pitch. We're not going to talk about me or my company, but that's what I do now. And so happy to be here. That said, if we can go to the next slide, because I know what we're going to talk about today is really this. I'm sure you probably hear a lot of talks about AI. Today, we're really not going to talk about AI, but really, quite honestly, without OT and critical infrastructure, AI doesn't happen, right? Our lives don't happen. So today we're going to kind of do an introduction for maybe some of you who don't know much about OT, operational technology, and industrial control systems. We're going to not go too deep. We don't have a lot of time, but give you a high-level overview of what that is. Because quite honestly, I truly believe, being a cybersecurity practitioner for 20 plus years, obviously we all know there's a drastic need for more cybersecurity people. But in OT and ICS, I think we have one of the most critical, I'll say, workforce gaps in any of the kind of cybersecurity subsectors. So hopefully after this talk, if this is something that interests you, get into the community. We need you. We need more people. And I'm going to talk about how much opportunity there is in this space. So that said, I'm going to go to the next slide. And so obviously, hopefully this clicker, oh yeah, the clicker's back. Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, clicker's back. So that said, I kind of touched on this. ICS, OT, industrial control systems, when you think about data centers and everything, right? Yeah.
We do have a question
cool.
from online.
Absolutely.
And I have no idea what this means, but
Okay.
you didn't like TN 3270 over DB 25?
did I like it? It's asking me if I like it.
It says you didn't. It does end
Yes.
with a question mark and then a little smiley face
Yes.
icon.
Yeah. That was kind of a joke, but yes, it's sarcasm. Yes. Yes.
Knowing who
Good
sent it,
sarcasm. Is it a
yeah.
character? It's a known character here at Isaka, the person I'm reading about.
Isaka and SDJ&A.
Oh, okay.
Heinrich Schmidt,
Okay.
if the name rings a
No,
bell.
nope, but appreciate it.
Is it a
Like you said,
sarcastic and
it's a
is it a
sarcastic.
valuable enough sarcasm to explain to everybody what it means? Or should we
It's
just
just
move
a
on?
very old legacy way of communicating to field devices.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So
Thanks, man.
yeah, I think it's referencing when we were migrating from serial networks to routable networks, kind of migrating off that. So yeah, that said, think about data centers, think about all this AI stuff. I think you all probably know the biggest kind of whether a data center happens or not is really can they get the power, right? And so, especially if you're a young person looking to get into careers and fields, I can tell you that, yeah, electrical engineering and people who are building data centers and if you think about data centers themselves too, what do they have? They have sensors and actuators, what measuring what? HVAC, lighting, everything. So even the data centers themselves have industrial control systems. If you think about some of the biggest hacks that we've heard of, right? Remember Target back in the days. What happened? How did that, incident start? Through the HVAC system. Think about Las Vegas and that story about a casino getting hacked through a fish tank, right? These are, I call it IoT. Maybe it's not OT. It's a kind of, fish tank isn't critical, but these are embedded devices, purpose-built devices doing specific functions with I/O, inputs and outputs, measuring temperatures, measuring flow, and everything else. So, yeah, so OT is only growing. The opportunity is only getting bigger. So that's why hopefully today we can get some people interested in this kind of subsector of cyber. Maybe not. Maybe the clicker isn't working. Oh, his mouse is moving. There you go. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, thank you, sir. All right. So what actually powers AI? I kind of touched on this. So obviously electric goods, substation pipelines, right? Pipelines putting gas, right, or natural gas to fuel uh, power plants, right, or even homes and everything else. I saw someone earlier who joined from Solar Turbines. They make great turbines. I have a buddy who works there. Yeah, great turbines um, that you'll often see. I heard their business is blowing up because of all the need for power generation, which is fantastic. And obviously, cool with like water, right? Water, obviously, water we drink every day. But some of these data centers, that depending on how they are cooled, there's numerous ways to cool them. Yeah, water is super critical. So, OT is really the systems that make the world run. And let's look at, yeah, the demand for power is like insane, right? I mean, these data centers and AI. I hope everyone, yeah, I'm sure everyone in this room is using AI every day. And so just really the building out of new data centers and the demand for electricity, right? I mean, it's more than doubling over the next 6 years. And so you think about all the new power plants that have to be built and everything else, just the sheer amount of critical infrastructure that's going to be built in the next decade is going to be absolutely insane. And so, yeah, we need more defenders focusing on, yeah, this part of cyber because it really is, yeah, it's a little different. And we'll talk about what's different about OT, right? It's not like IT where you just patch everything and patch it all the time. Actually, in OT, there's certain types of devices that are never patched. There's critical assets that are running Windows XP, Windows 95. This is real. These things are running right now. Some of the most critical infrastructure of our country. They can't patch it. So what do? As a cybersecurity professional, you have to think about other compensating measures, controls, and alternatives. Can you run an EDR? Can you run CrowdStrike on a PLC, a programmable logic controller? No, you cannot. You cannot run Microsoft Defender on these assets. It's not technically possible. They're not running a standard operating system that you would find on, right, on a laptop or a server. There's no Windows, there's no Linux, Unix. These are real-time operating systems, RTOSes, purpose-built, right, firmware for the function of the device. So you have to kind of change your hat and take the IT cloud enterprise hat off and start thinking about and start learning about OT, operational technology. Like I said, it's not about software. It's really, I think AI is it's an energy and infrastructure story. That's the big story. And I actually talked to my investors as well, which are other big themes happening in the world. Obviously, AI, massive change for the world. But what else is coming online? Autonomous cars, autonomous vehicles, right? That's IoT, there's this new XOT, right? Everything. What else? Humanoid robots. Those are coming. That's coming. It seems really cool to me. There's obviously sensors, actuators. These are embedded devices, probably not running common. They're not running Windows on a humanoid robot, okay? I'm not sure what they're running. I've never met one and dug into it. Maybe it's Linux based. I don't know. But you're right. These are purpose-built things doing certain functions. So that's changing. Think about space. I mean, with SpaceX going IPO, I mean, that's going to be, I don't know, Elon saying data centers into space, insane. But look, he's done other crazy things too. So who knows? But this is where the world's is going. So today, as I said, we're going to kind of do a deep or not a deep dive, but really just touch upon kind of what is OT and kind of talk about different we're going to walk through different acronyms and different things that if you're interested in this space or looking to get into this space, just some common yeah, nomenclature terms that you might hear. So what is OT? As I said, it's really the hardware and software that controls a physical process, and that can be anything. You're, you know, obviously power generation, you're burning fuel that's generating steam that's then spinning a turbine, and then you have cooling systems. I mean, these are all kind of, there's a lot of not only hardware but there's software associated with all of these systems. But it's not just that. Think about automotive and making cars. Think about I've been in Amazon in the fulfillment centers. I've worked in those places. Those things are absolutely insane, right? There's variable drives. There's tons, cameras, everything. And so some of the things that you might see, I touched on it earlier. I said it earlier. PLCs, those are programmable logic controllers. So what these are the actual kind of, if you're familiar, if you've ever been into an operational technology environment, there's sensors and actuators, and you might see wires from them going into a little kind of square box. Okay, that's essentially what the PLC is. And so that wire is transmitting a small electrical current to the PLC to read either digital or analog values. So digital meaning is it on or off? Like, is the valve closed? Is the valve open? Like maybe you're running a water system and is a valve on or off? Or analog value where it's measuring something like flow. How fast is the water going? Or what's the pressure of something? And so the electrical current kind of changes as the value changes in analog, and basically the PLC then has actually logic to control the physics of the overall process. So it says, oh, heck, if the flow is too high, then I need to turn off this valve. And so instrument and control engineers, you might hear INC, instrument and control engineers, actually program logic into these controllers to control the process. So as the PLCs are listening and understanding all the variables, they can make adjustments so things don't blow up or bad things don't happen. So that's what a PLC is. It's really one of the lowest levels or most critical devices that you would find in OT. Another common term is an RTU, a remote terminal unit. You mostly hear about those in a SCADA system, which we'll get to next. SCADA and DCS. Yeah, in a SCADA and DSES. What those are basically they're units that collect a lot of data from a lot of different endpoints and aggregate it and send it up to another basically larger collector that's collecting it from a large, I'll say, territory. So in electric utility speak, right? San Diego's a big lot of land, a lot of substations. I think SCG&E has, hundreds. SCE had thousands. PG&E has multiple thousands, just depending on the size of the electric utility. So what they do is they have RTUs locally at the substation collecting all the data. And if their connectivity to the control center is cut off, guess what? They're still locally collecting the data. And when the connectivity goes back on, they can ship that back to the control center. So the operators really, and their data historian that's storing all this data, they never lose all of that data. So that's what an RTU is. It's kind of like a protocol translator, a local data collector. So that's also something that you might hear people talk about. I touched on SCADA and DCS. These are different types of control systems. I just mentioned SCADA is more for large vasts of land, like electric utilities, like water, where you have pipelines, or a natural gas utility as well. Natural gas utilities also have local PLCs controlling like the pressure, right? The pressure's bad. They want some logic locally out in the field, so they'll actually combine a SCADA system with like a DCS as well, or components of a DCS. And then safety systems, those are, as they say, in certain verticals and sectors, like if you're refining oil, if you're in chemicals for like fertilizer, I mean, these are very hazardous things, where sadly things go wrong, people get hurt. And so safety systems are very like purpose built, like the most critical of critical, when it comes to the different kind of types of networks and environments and device types. And so, yeah, we'll talk about incidents. If you didn't know, there have been incidents where adversaries have gotten into safety systems and have shut down refineries overseas. They tried to blow up the plant, but they didn't, luckily, because the logic actually shut the plant down a couple times. But if you didn't know, these types of incidents actually have occurred. Have they occurred here in the U.S.? No, but they have occurred overseas, and we'll actually touch on. All right, so we already kind of touched on this, sorting out all the acronyms quickly. Kind of the umbrella term that covers everything is OT, or operational technology. Thanks to Gardner, they always like to come out with their own terms. And so they came out a couple years ago with cyber physical systems, CPS. So think about, yeah, it's cyber because, it's digital, cyber, physical because controlling the physical process. So thank you, Gardner, for confusing everyone once again and adding another acronym. But I love you. Hopefully you'll say good things about my startup. But anyways, that said, we already touched upon these. So ICS kind of an umbrella term that talks about all the controllers. You might hear another acronym called HMI, human machine interface. That's like what the operators, either locally or in the control center, if you ever see those boxes and you can see like water flow and there's all these cool little charts, it looks like it was cool back in 1990, and you like push them, that's what an HMI is. Like the operators can walk up to a screen and be like, oh, turn it off, and they touch the touch screen and it does something. That's what an HMI is. And we talked about SCADA. grids, pipeline, slower links, diverse sites, and in a DCS, which is yeah, like refineries, plants in manufacturing, a lot of local logic controller to controller type of stuff. Another really cool thing, which OT and ICS cybersecurity practitioners love talking about, is something called the Purdue model. Has anyone heard what the Purdue model is? Well, obviously, Mark, who used to work for me, does. Anyone else? Okay. Well, the Purdue model, yes, it actually came from the University of Purdue. And what it is, essentially, it's a reference architecture to describe kind of best practices on how to segment and create what they call zones and conduits within an industrial control system environment or OT environment. So if you think about it, and we had this concept kind of in the enterprise side, like trust levels almost, right? Trust levels, where you have level 0. This is the lowest level. This is the actually the sensor, like the physical equipment controlling the process, the sensors, the valves, the breakers. Like there's really, this is the physical part. There's no digital intelligence here. But then you come to level 1. As I said, this is where kind of yeah, that kind of physical meets digital starts, and that's where the PLCs, the RTUs, and basically things that are controlling the process. That's the most critical piece here. So that's level 1, and so a lot of times the connectivity here isn't like routable traffic like TCP/IP or anything like that. The connectivity between level 0 and level 1's usually through wires, like wires, right? Now, once you get to level 1, that's where things become routable because engineers want to connect to PLCs, change the logic for whatever reason. They want to connect to RTUs and make point changes for DMP3 if you're an electric utility. And so that's where routability comes into. And that's why it's so critical in ICS and OT. You want to protect the things that are controlling the physical process. All right. Then you move up to kind of level 2, which is the supervisory level. That's where we talked about the human machine interfaces and the SCADA servers are, where the operators, right? They sit in a room and they can start controlling things either locally there or remotely from hundreds of miles away. And then we have level 3, which is, this is really, if you really think about it, this is where a lot of kind of IT stuff exists. So you'll think, workstation, like Windows-based workstations. You'll probably have an Active Directory, local Active Directory that's separate, hopefully separate from your corporate environment. You'll have one dedicated to the OT environment. And so that's where you'll see a lot of stuff there. And then there's what they call level 3.5, which is the DMZ. And Mark, if you have a question, we can get you a mic. Let's make sure he gets some. Yeah, he gets a mic here.
Is it on? The if you remember the Colonial Pipeline problem happened 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was? That was actually an accounting problem.
Yeah.
And although all the infrastructure worked, they couldn't charge the customers for moving oil down their pipelines.
That's right.
So they had to shut down their system because of nothing that had to do with the infrastructure. So not only do you have to worry about, I mean, the level 3 covers this, right? Not only do you have to worry about the infrastructure itself, but you have to worry about the subsystems that it feeds and that feed it. So if you couldn't charge for the oil moving through your pipeline, you're giving away oil, right? Yeah. So Colonial Pipeline had to shut it down. I mean, they couldn't do it.
Well, I would argue, Mark, most of the like OT outages and incidents that we've seen here in the States are directly because of that, right? It's really IT systems that OT leverages for whatever reason. In Colonial Pipeline, you're exactly right. They were in the finance and billing systems, and they decided to shut down the pipeline because they're like, crap, we don't know where this is going. We can't charge anyone. We don't know how much it's going. Like we got to turn it off. And if you remember that was pretty scary. You know, a lot of the East Coast didn't have gasoline in gas stations. Scary stuff. But if you also remember, the adversaries actually apologized about it. They're like, oh, shoot, we didn't really want to do that, because like Biden got really mad at them and said, we're coming after you. And they're like, oh, crap. But anyways, uh, Mark's exactly right. Is a lot of these OT incidents are really just kind of impacts of IT cyber incidents, and so you really have to when you're in OT cybersecurity, you have to think, okay, the system I'm protecting, what else does it rely on, and what's the consequence if my ERP system's down, my data historian is down, or whatever other things it relies on. Because yeah, if you think of, most people here, I'm sure, know what the CIA triad is, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. In OT, like confidentiality, we don't care about. Like throw that out. Like that's done. Availability is top priority, and integrity is also very critical, because if you're making control decisions, right, on wrong data, like, okay, question for the audience, what very famous malware was sending fake data to the operators and things were breaking
Stuxnet.
besides Mark?
Oop.
Oh, you already said it. All right, Stuxnet, that's right. Probably to this day, the most I think probably the most advanced malware ever created in the history of this world, quite honestly. I think it still is. I'm sure with AI, we're going to see some next level stuff here soon. But yeah, so Stuxnet. So if you don't know about Stuxnet, that was the malware that was in the Iranian nuclear refinement facility, right? Some person, I forget who, I think it's been released now, I don't know, some contractor plugged in a USB drive to some computer. This is totally air gap network. You can't get in it. So the only way in is physically going there. He plugged in a USB drive, and it started basically, yeah, it infected like a variety of Windows boxes, but it was purpose built for Siemens. So Siemens makes PLCs down here, and the centrifuges is what spin, right, and do what, I'm not an expert in the nuclear side, but basically the malware was sending basically fake data to the operators watching it, and they're like, everything's fine, but then they go physically inspect, they're like, wait a second, it's not fine. And so when you start thinking about it, the whole point is that Mark's exactly right. Like, you have to look at the dependencies and really start thinking about those things. All right, so uh, next we're going to talk about yeah, what runs on a PLC. I kind of touched on this, right? It's not Windows or Linux. These are real-time operating systems. They're very, very different. They're very different, right? A lot of these PLCs and these controllers, they don't have a terabyte of RAM. They don't have like, right. The memory is actually very small. These are small, kind of actually pretty cost-effective devices. And so you don't have like the resources to run Windows on this. You don't have the resources to run a Linux operating system on it. They build purpose-built, very lightweight real-time operating systems for the applications and functions that they want. So very different than IT. And then we talked about protocols. We talked about DNP3 earlier. Runs on TCP port 20,000. So if you have any Wireshark people out there and you've got some cool PCAP files, I'm sure there's some online. Yeah, download some DNP3 packets and start looking for TCP port 20,000. Modbus, of course, a very common one as well that you see, legacy. And yeah, you see some other ones like SCOM, which is Siemens. Um, Ethernet IP, also called SIP, that's from Rockwell, that's 44818. But if you know about OT, yeah, it was started a long time ago. And if you see, born in the serial era, so it is all closed loop systems, right? There's no routability, and so the worry about authentication and encryption and integrity didn't really exist back then. But guess what? They moved all those protocols to routable, and so now, right? There's a common term or phrase said in OT cybersecurity, which is insecure by design, because yeah, there's no really security baked into these protocols. So if you remember that story back at my time at SDG&E, right? You send a malformed packet. If none of these devices authenticate or check the integrity of the communications, they just accept it. Yeah, if you know what you're doing, you can send commands, right? You can any really OT device that's running these protocols. I'm not harping on an SDG&E. This is an industry-wide problem. If you're on the network and you know what you're doing, and you know specifically what to turn on or set point to turn off, yeah, you can actually make changes, which is crazy. All right. So that said, IT versus OT. I touched on this actually earlier. Talked about the CIA triad. Obviously for OT, safety and availability, right? Safety is critical, and that's super important. If it fails, right, in IT, they steal data, they steal your intellectual property. Terrible day. You might get fines, right? You might get fines. You might look bad in the press. But in OT, right, people can get hurt. Things can break, right? I mean, if you remember, we're talking about incidents and another one, Mark, similar situation. If everyone remembers the JLR Jaguar incident last year, Jaguar Land Rover, okay? Yeah, they did a massive incident last year. The British government had to bail them out with $3.5 billion. Their whole operations were shut down for months. This wasn't an OT hack. I believe they attacked their ERP systems, or it was definitely something on the IT side that then impacted their plants from an operational standpoint.
It's something like the planning to build cars.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
it was an
something like
IT only problem, but they
Yeah.
couldn't then plan to build cars. It's sort of like the Colonial Pipeline. They couldn't charge for the oil moving through the pipeline.
Yep, exactly. I touched on this patching a system, right? I'm sure a lot of you evaluate CVEs and vulnerabilities, and you're like, hey, should we patch or we not patch? I'm saying patching's dead. It's over, especially with AI. That's just my personal belief. I could go down a dark rabbit hole if you ever want to talk about that. But I talked about OT. People have planned outages, like right. Power plants don't shut down very often. They are needed. If we can get this gentleman to Mike, he's got a question. But we patch maybe once a year, or if not ever. So, yes, sir.
Is it working? You hear me?
I think so. Yeah.
Pacific Gas and Electric. They
PG&E,
control
yes.
all the natural gas and power for the Bay Area.
Sure.
I made it to the final four. And they obviously made the wrong decision because I'm here. Right.
Okay. You
But
made it. What's the final four?
The question that supposedly I failed that they didn't like, I'm going to ask you. Is that all right?
Sure.
Because you said something that triggered.
Okay.
What do you do in the event of a system failure?
Okay. Well, hopefully you have like an incident response plan. You follow that. That's been practiced for for whatever has occurred. So depending on what the failure is, especially in OT, hopefully you've got a plan, right? An IR plan that every company should have, and you initiate that plan. So I would say initiate the IR plan and follow the plan. Yeah, that's my kind of off the cuff type of response. Hopefully, was that your answer, or did you give something else?
I said pray.
Hey, he said Fred. That's not a bad one either.
No, I did this dance around. Is it a considered crown jewel of our architecture? What's the outage? What's the cost of shutting it down versus trying to maintain it? What are the dependencies? I thought it was a great answer.
They
I should
told you that's a bad
pray.
answer. But how do you know that was the question that you slipped up on? Did they told you? They're like, yeah, we didn't really like that answer.
That's the only one that caused me about the longest 3 seconds to like figure out how to answer. Everything else nailed it.
You're on it. Yeah. Well, if it makes you feel better, yeah, I interviewed there a couple times. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, these jobs, these interviews.
And then the other question to ask you: live off the land. What is your best defense off of that? That seems to be the most incredible undefensible attack for
Yeah.
critical systems.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to monitor, you've got to do like behavioral analytics almost, where, and I'm sure now there's probably AI tools and probably other sim tools that can, well, there's behavior analytic tools
So
today.
really just searches, queries,
So
Splunk,
like
right?
threat hunting and automated,
Yeah.
like using AI and automated searching for like, why is Joe logging in 5 times to the same device, or logging in from this device to this device to this device all in 30 minutes? Like, that's weird. Like you've got to think about, I'll say, behavioral use cases that non-humans would make, especially in this AI days where, I mean, look, let's be honest, AI is here and adversaries are using it. And oh, heck, agents are here and they're just hacking companies. And so they're doing it at a very fast speed. So the good news is, if you write good, I'll say, behavioral analytics, you might be able to identify agentic things happening, and your team can react and respond accordingly. So it's hard living off the land because they're using the techniques that, everyday people use. It's tough. It's real tough.
And for those that aren't familiar with live off the land, it's fascinating because there is not a security tool in the universe that can detect behavior. It's somebody getting in and using security's own tools to navigate the architecture.
Yeah. He's got a mic. Yep.
Oh, can I use this mic?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, in the age of like Black Basta attacks, is everyone familiar with how they operate? They get in through Teams, and then they socially engineer that user as IT to upload more tools. So I thought about living off the land attacks a lot, and what it comes down to is correlating rules. So it's pretty odd that they would have downloaded on their computer many programs right after a Teams call. You could also analyze other artifacts if you have sufficient logging, and that could build really robust correlating rules to detect living off the land attacks. So I just got to say that.
Thanks for that. I'm just checking the time. Wow. Got a lot more slides, so I got to speed things up. But anyways, we talked about different incidents. Talked about Stuxnet already. A lot of these on the top are probably the most well-known, at least in the OT cyberspace, maybe in the cybersecurity community as well. We talked about Stuxnet. Actually, I talked about in the Middle East, there's some adversaries actually hacked into firewall, gone into the safety system, shut down a huge oil refinery in the Middle East. If you didn't know, actually, an old SDG employee found that. He was working for me a long time ago. Julian Gutmanis. If you go to 60 Minutes, he was interviewed by 60 Minutes as well, which is really, really cool. So shout out to San Diego and SDG&E. As I said, we had some of the most elite OT cyber folks ever assembled here at SDG&E. It was awesome. Colonial Pipeline, of course, we know, but these are kind of big incidents. But there's also a lot of like enterprise incidents maybe you haven't heard of. Molson Coors, they're attacking our beer. Not cool. JBS, Toyota, tons of a variety of different malware incidents. Clorox, I talked about JLR. Asahi beer again. And then if you didn't read, I think it was last week, Coca-Cola, Fairlife, right, who makes milk, they had a incident, right, that shut down. So OT incidents are happening. These are real. If you read the threat reports out there, highly recommend one of our advisors. If you know the OT cybersecurity space, you've probably heard of a gentleman named Robert M. Lee. He's also the CEO and co-founder of Dragos. They have incredible, I'll say, OT threat reports, annual ones. Go down those, read those. And what we're seeing with the adversaries are getting into these systems, but they're starting to learn now the physical process. Like they're starting to learn and gain intelligence and collect data around understanding now. Because as I said, getting into these systems, that's one thing. And no one here in this, or there hasn't been an incident in the US yet where they have gotten in and shut down the OT side of things. But what they're seeing is these adversaries are getting in and they're extracting tons of data to learn the physical process. So if and when they need to shut down the physical process, they know exactly how to do that. So that's kind of a very common theme that they're seeing now. That's the latest report from last year on kind of what the threat landscape is happening from an OT perspective. Um, that said, I'm gonna kind of run through this. One really cool thing that I want to talk about is if you didn't know, because obviously my startup is in the OT cybersecurity space. This space, from an investment standpoint, is probably one of the hottest subcategories of every cybersecurity category there is. If you didn't know, I talked about Dragos. They were just acquired a couple weeks ago by Accenture for $3.25 billion. And they also acquired three other companies and they're combining all of their technologies into one. So, Accenture doesn't buy a lot of tech companies, I'll tell you that, right? They're a consulting firm. But what they have is a massive OT cybersecurity consulting business. They have built somewhere, from what I hear, around, they do about $1 billion of sales in OT cybersecurity every year. That's massive. And so they just bought a software company, or they didn't buy it. They have a majority like investment of it. They're not operating it. Accenture's not operating it. Dragos is still its own entity, and run by Rob Emily and everyone else. But what they did is made a huge bet saying, as I talked about, with space, AI, robotics, autonomous vehicles, this is like OT is here to stay, and there's huge growth area in that space. And so this is now the second $1 billion exit for OT cybersecurity. Um, Nozomi Networks was acquired by Mitsubishi for $1 billion. And there's also another really great OT cybersecurity company named Clarity. They've raised a $400 million investment round. So what I'm trying to say, if you're trying to get into OT cyber, there's not a better time to do that than now. There's massive opportunity if you want to get into consulting and get into services. If you want to work for one of these companies selling software, there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of need, and there's just so much critical infrastructure being built now. If you're a person looking to find your niche in cybersecurity, OT is it, or it's available. Yes.
Just if for somebody that might be interested in their career going in that direction,
Yeah.
do you have any recommendations on where they could start?
Absolutely. That is somewhere here. Yeah. How to get into the OT domain. Everyone's like, take training. You know, I'm not saying training is bad, but I used to interview a lot of people when I was an operator, and taking a training course for a week. I'm not saying it's bad to give you some good foundational knowledge, but the real way to do it from my standpoint is really getting plugged into the community, find a mentor, and go to events, conferences, and really start associating yourself with people in the community in general. Follow them on LinkedIn, follow them on Twitter. There's a gentleman named Mike Holcomb. Message me. He's fantastic. He has resources on his LinkedIn, free training on YouTube, has all these links. So, learn, get plugged into the community, find a mentor, find someone who you relate with and can get you plugged in. And now, being on both sides, a practitioner and a salesperson, I can tell you in life, relationships are everything, right? And if you're not plugged into the community, if you're applying to jobs online with clicks of buttons, that's not going to work. You really need to get out there, put yourself out there. I know it's difficult. It's difficult for everyone. Trust me, I get very uncomfortable at times. Yeah, just get out there and just show your passion and your determination to learn and be passionate about it. And I think good things will happen. So awesome. And get hands on. Yeah. Try to find free ranges. There's ranges out there. Um, you know, you can build, yeah, probably some cheap home labs, but just getting familiar with the terminology, how things operate, that's good. And when you have an interview, just relaying that to them, that you have that knowledge and background, I think is a good step in the right direction.
No, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that said, I know it's really past my time. Um,
We've got a few more minutes
okay,
to
okay. Maybe I'll, yeah. So, in OT cybersecurity, well, yeah, uh, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the term gatekeeper. There's some people like OT, OT cybersecurity has kind of a bad history of some kind of established people being, at least online, kind of gatekeeping, like, oh, you're not an OT expert, like you're an IT person, like don't talk about this. Um, I really hate that, by the way. As I said, I think we need a lot more people in the community. And so if you ever want to, if you ever think about wanting to join the community, yeah, these are kind of maybe things that come to mind. Hey, like, hey, I'm not an engineer; it's too specialized for me. I need years of plant experience, right? There's no way in. Long story short, yeah, there's ways to overcome these challenges. And as I said, interviewing probably thousands of people. What I really looked for is just passion and drive. I think you can learn the technical things. That's the easy. It's really the soft skills, the communication, and just the passion, willingness to get stuff done. That's it. That's what I hire for. It's really about culture. Now that I'm lucky enough to have my own team. Culture is everything. And if you get the right people in the right role to the right position, magic happens. And so just find your niche, be passionate about it, find that thing that you're just so passionate about that work is no longer work. It's like, it's fun. It's like, I'm enjoying this. Like you're not counting down the hours or minutes to leave the office. Find a role that and a culture and a team and a company that really talks to you and yeah, and that you're passionate in. So yeah, that said, yeah, don't know why my AI generated PowerPoint put in digital twins and AI reasoning agents. That's probably because that's about my company. But that said, thank you, AI. AI fell. But one last thing. Yeah, we need more practitioners. So hopefully today, um, if you're if you love cybersecurity like I do, if you're interested in figuring out how hacking things can literally blow stuff up, or not that we want to blow stuff up, or physical things happen, that's what OT is all about. And man, that's really cool.
We have
Wait, wait, we've got some more questions online. So, yes.
Okay, so first question is, how do you see AI changing OT? Is it really having that big of an impact given the physical disconnect?
Yeah. That's a great question. Well, there's kind of two parts to that question that I'm reading. How's AI changing basically operations of OT? I think in general, right? You think about SCADA systems and operators and making decisions based upon data. We're going to start having some semi-autonomous to almost fully autonomous at some point, AI to control stuff like the electric grid. I think, or doesn't matter really what the process is, but we're going to see more and more of that. So I, I don't think it's here yet. Obviously, I don't think with OT. If you know OT and OT cybersecurity, we love on-prem things. We don't want to share our data, especially with Anthropic and OpenAI. I think most enterprises are like that too, right? Is data privacy and concerns. If you're if you're an enterprise and if you don't believe Anthropic and OpenAI are after your data, in my personal belief, you need to rethink that. They're sure as hell after your data. And even though they might say, hey, we don't use this for training, it's like, okay, like how are you really verifying that? No, no, don't do it truthfully. I mean, trust me, they want to, like they have every data set in the world. They have learned every data set on the internet. So what's left? It's the private stuff, right? It's the use cases that do they want to build a model that's the best electric utility operator in the world? Oh, heck yeah, they do, because they want to sell it to you, right? Or do they want to buy a model that's the best whatever it is that you do? Heck yeah, they do. And how they're going to do that? They're going to use your data. They want your data. So, so for OT cyber people who historically, right, have kind of said, hey, we need this on-prem. There's a lot of regulatory requirements that actually, like in electric utilities, don't allow you to even use cloud, really. So getting to that question, AI is going to have slower adoption in OT and OT cyber than enterprise IT and cloud, just by the general nature of the business. And I personally think open source, private models, purpose trained models. Like you don't need a frontier model that knows everything about everything to do a specific function. You need a model that's trained on the things and data sets that you care about to do what you need to do. Additionally, you don't need a frontier model that is, I don't know how many parameters and uses so many tokens. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg to ask it one question. You want it on-prem. You want it smaller model, uses less tokens, less costly. So in my opinion, AI and OT, I think the future is small models, private, trained on private data. And yeah, we're not there yet in OT, but in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be wild.
Has a way of sneaking up on you. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for the answer. So next question from online is, what is the top 5 audit concerns for anybody who's auditing OT internally?
Oh gosh. Yeah, good question. Top 5 audit concerns. Well, this isn't a pitch. Well, this isn't a pitch for my product, but one of the reasons why we actually founded my company, I'll tell you a funny story. I'm not gonna say who I was working for, but I was in a large facility that had 2 spinning turbines, and it was powering lots of things. And someone ran in for compliance reasons, said, we're gonna run a Rapid7 scan against your GE turbine network. And I go, oh hell no, you're not. Like this isn't an IT. He's like, I got an email from your director saying I'm doing it right now. I call my director. I'm like, look, man, this is different. Like this is different than IT. Don't do this. He's like, we have to. And 2 minutes and 11 seconds after you push that start button, yeah, we had 2 turbines full stop. It was a noise heard from over a mile away. We were escorted out of the facility and we weren't let back in for over 2 years because of what he did that day. This is true. This is real. And what I mean by that as an IT auditor is you have to, because it's a great question, and the reason why we actually developed our tool, there's very limited ways that you can really use tools that you can use today to audit the security posture of OT environments, because it's not an IT environment. It's not a cloud environment. You can't scan it. You can't use pen testing as a service, agentic tools that are coming out that are just going to pen test everything. The consequences of anything bad happen are too great. And you're not often allowed to install software, add a new device. It's not allowed. So what can you do? So I guess a long answer response as an auditor. Right now for OT, I would say step 1, my highest priority is look at how defendable or defensible the network architecture is. So what I mean by that, look at remote access, look at connectivity to and from the internet. There's a lot of vendors, like in a lot of OT environments, like vendors who support the environment have remote access. Look into that. Look at the segmentation internally. We talked about the Purdue model, right? Is there segmentation between the turbine network from the operator network? Is there firewalls and zones and conduits? So I would say top priorities, network segmentation. Look at what that network looks like, and don't just get a Visio diagram that was like developed 5 years ago. Like get the actual configuration files and load them up into tools like Franos. That's not a plug, and really start digging into kind of what that network architecture looks like. I would say that's kind of step one. Step two, obviously, is IR. You got to have an IR plan, especially in OT. So develop the IR plan. Make sure you are practicing that at least once a year. That's critical. I think number three would probably be detection and response capabilities. So I talk about those first generation OT tools that are looking for adversaries and threats. Yeah, so have a detection and response capability. So if and when something bad's detected, you can respond and react. And then I would say remote access, yeah, which I kind of touched on network architecture, but remote access, like make sure obviously MFA, right? Like you got to have MFA. There's some really cool OT technologies. There's data diodes that now allow remote access. If you don't know what data diodes are, those are basically one-way communication, outbound only type of things. They have remote access ones that kind of do some nifty, cool things. And there's some where physically someone has to like turn a key to even allow someone to remotely access in. So like start thinking about those types of things. That's critical. Yeah. So hopefully that helps.
Just real quick, there are two subjects, but the one I think that's the most important for a group, especially people that are dialed into this, is how to get in, and you had a slide on it. I look at the people that I see on LinkedIn that I used to work with. Many of them came in through IT audit. Many of them came in through SOC operations, right?
Yeah.
A SOC operator is not a real embedded systems person. He's a person that can walk through the run books when something happens, right?
Absolutely.
So you have a run book that says do this, do this, do this when this event occurs. And I think that the AI helps that person. The AI says, hey, why aren't you running this? Or you skip step 6 or, whatever. But I think that there's a real opportunity there, like you said, for IT audit and for SOC people, because if you look for SOC operators today online, there's a ton of positions, and the requirements to get into that job is not as steep as you would think.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, sure.
Just as you were sharing the Purdue model, which was like totally new to me, so appreciate the education there. Is there anything like on a NIST front that touches on OT in those ways?
I'm trying to think NIST. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure about NIST. I think there is a standard that talks about operational technology. It's like 853 rewritten for OT. I forget what the number is. Mark,
Yeah,
you
it's
might
like
know.
217 or something. If
217?
you go
Okay.
to the NIST 800-53, they just came out with a new revision last fall, and in there they list the associated NIST standards, which is very nice. So if you go to that webpage for NIST 502, I think it is, you'll see on that NIST page that here are the other references, and it's these other standards. So it's actually fairly easy to find, but you got to know where to look.
Got it.
But
Okay.
but the key, I'll say, framework for OT and ICS is IEC 62443, which is a set of standards that are extremely valuable. That is the gold standard of OT cybersecurity. And so they have everything. I mean, there must be, I don't know, 12 to 15 different standards covering pretty much everything. So if you want to learn best practices of OT, ICS cybersecurity, these aren't free standards. You do have to pay for IEC 62443, but that is the gold standard of, I'll say, ICS and OT cyber. So learn that, and yeah, there's audits around that. There's different levels of maturity of product security for OT and ICS devices that vendors get certified on. So it's not just product security. They have everything like risk assessment standard. They've got like a program standard. So there's a whole slew of different standards in 62443. Highly recommend if you're interested to become familiar with all those.
Okay, no, awesome. And I was thinking on behalf of people that are curious and more interested in ways that they can get into the industry.
Yeah. And yeah, reach out to me if you're interested. Find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you to the Saka team for having me.